Once again, welcome everybody to WordPress Pittsburgh's virtual meetup for May 12th, 2020. We have Angela Bowman with us today for a presentation on understanding Yoast SEO. She's the co-organizer of the Boulder WordPress Meetup and Boulder Developers Meetup. She speaks at WordCamps. She is a WordPress instructor teaching theme customization, SEO, and security. She spends most of her time building custom WordPress sites, and in her spare time, she is the co-host of the Women in WP podcast. And so welcome, Angela. If you want to bring up your screen and take it away.
Yes, okay, let me. See, we're gonna do this screen. I'm gonna move you guys over to my other screen just so I can maybe see you, possibly. If I'm doing this, I'm looking at you. It's just so unnerving to me to present kind of in a vacuum. Let's see. So
we're here. We're here for you.
Here. That's awesome. Okay. So yeah, welcome. I guess I labeled this, we have it as Understanding Yoast. I decided to title this presentation Getting Yoast Right. It's mostly technical aspects of the Yoast plugin, especially for people who are new to using Yoast and just need to get started with the correct settings, or just maybe have been using it for a while and didn't know that there were all these settings that you needed to be aware of. I think what I might do is just wait until, I'm wondering if I should just wait until the end for questions. Otherwise, we might get kind of bogged down in the middle. You're also welcome to put questions in the chat. And Ray, if you think you can interrupt me to ask a quick question, and it seems topical, I'm happy to do that, but we could also just kind of do all the questions at the end. I'll leave, just, make a note or put it in the chat, and then we can go through them all, or however you want to keep track of your questions, because I know there will be a lot of questions.
Yep, I'm tracking them as people post them in the chat.
That's awesome. Okay. So I got the date and the year right. Feels like it should be November right now. Here we are, just May. A long way to go. So again, a little bit about me, where you can contact me. I did share these slides on the actual meetup on meetup.com, so you'll have access to that. I'd like to start off by just saying, what does Yoast do? What do these SEO plugins that we install in WordPress do, and why do we need them? And what do they not do? So primarily what the Yoast plugin does is it helps you meet the technical SEO standards and gives you some feedback about the quality of your content in terms of keyword density and writing readability, and how you might be thinking about structuring your content to be more SEO friendly, or help you rank for certain keywords. SEO from a technical standpoint, make sure that your site uses canonical URLs to avoid duplicate content. A real simple example of that might be if your site was showing up under www and non-www. That's something that WordPress actually handles, but Yoast can help with other issues with URLs. Provides valid schema markup for structured data, which is a super, super technical topic, which you probably want to do a meetup all on its own around. What it doesn't do is it does not improve the rank of your pages all on its own. It's not like you install it and suddenly you've done SEO. SEO involves many, many, many factors. And in fact, even just what you're doing on your site in terms of your on-page optimization is even just one small slice of what SEO, search engine optimization, is about. And for those of you who do not know what SEO means, it does stand for search engine optimization, and it's the wanting to naturally appear on that first page of the Google search results. That's what we all want to do. And that's getting harder and harder and harder as other things are dominating that page. This is part of a 6-hour class that I teach. So I'm just taking like a slice of it, about 45 minutes to an hour of this class that's really just based on settings that I think people commonly miss. So technical SEO and what Yoast is doing with that is, one, it's allowing you to control to some extent what shows on the search engine results page. So when your site comes up in the search engine results page, that blue or purple link, if you've already visited it, that title in purple or blue, you control with the Yoast SEO plugin, or someone mentioned all-in-one SEO. It allows you to control what that title is and how it's generated. And to some extent, it lets you control the meta description in the black letters, the little description below the title. What's funny about that is that you might type something into the Yoast SEO plugin settings on a page as to what you'd like the meta description to be. But depending on the search, Google might decide, you know what, we have a better description for this page. And so Google does override that description from time to time. So if you've ever seen that, you're not going crazy, you didn't do something wrong. Google is really making a lot of decisions about what happens on the search engine results page that are beyond your control. Schema markup, it allows you to show other cool things on the search engine results page, like it will show, if you have a product, it will show the price of the product. And if you have reviews enabled, it will show the star ratings. It also, the Yoast free plugin allows correct information to show up in the Google Knowledge panels and provides support for rich article pins on Pinterest. And that's kind of new to April 2020, that Yoast spent a lot of time working on the schema. And after I'm done talking, we can pop into a Google search and look at what a knowledge panel looks like. You don't really have control over that. It's one of those things Google just does, but at least Yoast is setting you up. If Google decides to give you a Google Knowledge panel, it's kind of giving Google the right stuff for that. Index, no index, it lets you control what Google shows on the results page and what you might want to have indexed or not. So for example, thank you pages, certain pages on our site that aren't really valuable for SEO, we may not want Google to index and have show up in the search results. Open graph data, it lets you control like what images and text display in social media. If someone shares a post on Facebook or Twitter, Yoast gives you the option of customizing what shows on Facebook or Twitter uniquely, and that's super, super awesome. And then lastly, it gives you this keyword readability analysis. It, kind of makes you feel a little bit bad about your writing. Like I thought I was writing on this topic and I thought I was pretty understandable, but wow, I use really long sentences and I'm not using my keywords in my heading, that kind of thing. So we'll go into those screens. So the first thing I recommend that people do, and wow, that type is really big, is connect their sites to Google Search Console. To do that, you'll install the Yoast plugin, which is as easy as going to plugins, add new, do a search for Yoast, you'll find it, click the install button and activate. You'll also, before you just dive into registering your site with Google Search Console, you'll want to make sure that you have the URL for your site, you know what it is, because right now what's happening in the Google search URL bar is Google's hiding the www. So you'll want to go to your settings area in WordPress, to general, and just see am I using www or not, and just take a note and choose which you're going to use for the WordPress address. Site address should be the same. Sometimes you maybe set up your site a long time ago and you can't remember how you set it up. So just take a peek over there, see what you got going on. You'll notice that my address there shows as HTTPS. Everyone who has a website now should be having a secure socket layer and SSL certificate on their site. Most web hosts provide that for free. Your site may have that installed, but you maybe haven't really taken advantage of it. So there's ways you can check to see if that's the case on your site. You can visit your site in the URL field in the browser, just type HTTPS and your site. And if it comes up with that, it means that your host has installed it for you. And you can go ahead and change these settings to use the HTTPS. A lot of people don't know that's already done for them. And if not, contact your host and find out how you can get SSL set up. It's quite mandatory now. So to submit your site to Google Search Console, and the reason you want to do this is Google is going to provide you a lot of information about the health of your site. It's going to let you know if your site is down. It will let you know if it's starting to see weird content from your site, like bizarre, spammy links coming off your site. It just provides a lot of great information about the health of your site. So you will need to have a Google account. You'll need to then sign up for Google Search Console. And after that, I have a few slides that just describe how you will verify your site with Google Search Console. There are two different options. One is to verify the whole domain. The other is to do it just by a prefix. When you verify the domain with Google Search Console, it's verifying all versions of the site, including all subdomains. So that means if you have shop.yourwebsite.com, that's going to be included with this verification. And one thing I don't know about that, I typically like to set it up by URL prefix so I can have different accounts within Google Search Console for my different subdomains. If I do have like shop.askwpgirl.com, I'd want to set that up separately. If you choose the domain option, you're going to have to go to your domain registrar and verify with them, though Google is connected with a lot of the popular ones like GoDaddy, name.com, that kind of thing. So they do, as long as you're logged into your domain registrar, it makes that process fairly easy. My instructions on these other slides are related to doing it by the URL prefix, which is super tedious, but pretty easy. So again, if you're verifying the domain, doing the domain verification, Google provides you instructions for how to do that at your domain registrar. And if you do have GoDaddy or name.com, they'll kind of do it for you. Option 2, the URL prefix verification, you can download a file and upload it to the public HTML folder where your website is hosted, and that will verify it for you. What I often like to do is use the HTML tag option, and Google will provide you this tag that you can copy and paste right into Yoast SEO's Webmaster Tools tab, and then it's verified, and you click verify and you're good to go. The challenge with that URL verification is that you have to add every single version of your site to that for it all to work, and it's kind of super tedious and annoying, but it goes pretty quickly once you've verified with the first URL. So for example, my first URL might be http://askwpgirl.com. Once that's verified, I can repeat the process of adding the next domain and choosing URL prefix again and clicking verify, and it will just verify. So it goes pretty quick after you finish doing the first one. So what you will do is verify all variations with HTTP, without with HTTP, HTTPS, with and without the www. And then based on your WordPress settings, Google just knows which of those is your preferred domain. And when you're looking at your account in Google Search Console, you'll just be focused on the main URL for your site. And in my case, it's the HTTPS without the www. So it is annoying that you have to do all four. That's why the domain version is better, as it covers all those domains, but I wouldn't do it if you do have a subdomain. So once your site is verified with Google Search Console, I do this with all my clients. It's super helpful to poke around their reports. It will take a day for data to start to show up. But wow, you can get a lot of good information, like, are there pages that are coming up with errors? Do you have 404 not found pages? How's your mobile usability? Are there errors in mobile with any of your pages? Sometimes you might have a page that just got messed up somehow. Maybe some weird HTML got put onto it. And now it's not like being mobile responsive because it's kind of broken. So Google Search Console is just a fabulous way to keep tabs on what's happening on your site. The other thing in Google Search Console that is helpful that you won't see in Google Analytics unless you connect Search Console to Google Analytics is you'll see the actual search terms that people use to find your site. And wow, there's just a wealth of information within Google Search Console that you can mine and get ideas about content you might want to write based on the kind of searches people are doing that give Google that you are getting impressions for in Google. And it will tell you click-through rates, like someone searched on how to install SSL and your site came up 2,000 times, but people only clicked on it 150 times. So what can you do better with your content, because you're showing up in the search results, but people aren't clicking through? And that's all really good data to have. Lastly, with Google Search Console, you'll want to make sure that you're getting the email alerts. If you're logged in to Search Console, you can just click the link in these slides. Otherwise, you'll want to click on the little person gear icon in the upper right toolbar. And then from there, you can navigate to email preferences and enable notification by email. And Google will send you just regular cool health reports about your site, and also let you know if your site has any big problems. So let's see, do I have, oh, there, WordPress settings. We're on to WordPress settings. So with WordPress settings, it's just one of the first things I do when I go to audit a site is I'll go to settings permalinks. I want to see how people's URLs are being rendered. And the most common advice is to use postname. Back in the day, I don't even know if we really had that as an option. We had day and name. When postname was an option, there was some hit to performance because of the way the search for that URL was done in the database. That was a long time ago. It's really safe and great to use postname as your permalink structure. The date thing kind of bothers me because it just makes your pieces dated. Why do you need to date your pieces? It would be, unless you're a news site and have a really compelling reason to have a date on there. I don't even see real news sites putting dates on their URLs. So my recommendation is to set your permalink structure to postname. If it's set to plain, it's kind of a problem because that URL where you see in this example sample post, those two words in your, or those word, however many words it is, also called the slug, is helpful for SEO. That's one of like the ranking factors for your page rank is what's the URL, what's the slug of the post, and does that match the keywords that you're trying to use on the post? So that's super helpful to make sure that that's working and set. If you're having any problems with that, setting it and having it work, you definitely need to contact your web host. Reading, I've had, it's kind of sad, but I've had like a number of people come into my SEO class saying, you know, this new web developer, we spent all this money, we built this new website, and for the last 6 months, it's not showing up on Google. And that's because the developer, when they were developing the site, checked this checkbox that says discourage search engines from indexing the site. And so they come into my class on a Tuesday, part 2 of the class is on Thursday. I say, well, uncheck that box. And then by the time you come back on Thursday, you'll be showing up in Google. And sure enough, that's the case. So make sure you're not blocking search engines. The cool thing about having the Yoast plugin running as well as Google Search Console is they'll both tell you if you're doing this. So you got a little bit of redundancy reminder that there's a problem on your site. So the Yoast settings and tools within Yoast. When you install Yoast, it will add a new area to your WordPress dashboard on the left side in that dark gray kind of sidebar area. And it'll say Yoast. And when you click on that, there's a general tab. There's also a tab that says features. And on the features tab, it lets you turn on or off different features with Yoast that you may or may not want to enable. The SEO analysis, I have links to all the in-depth details about each of these features available on the Yoast site. Yoast also has great videos, and tutorials, and an amazing handbook on SEO that I highly recommend working through. So the SEO analysis is where it's just going to evaluate your content on a page-by-page, post-by-post basis, and we'll see a screenshot of that and give you kind of red light, green light, yellow light, like how are you doing with that? So we kind of want that on. Readability analysis really just tells you, are your sentences too long? And I find that helpful because I tend to write these really long, complicated sentences with prepositional phrases and then, you know, semicolons and just too many words. So readability is important. It helps with accessibility partly to keep your sentences a little bit more short and break up some more complicated thoughts. It might also help with your SEO for the bots to also begin to understand what you're talking about by having your content be in a way more crawlable, more understandable, and to the point. Cornerstone content rank. This is an option. I usually leave this on. I haven't necessarily made the most use of it as I could. We'll talk about that in a moment. The text link counter, I find that particularly annoying. It basically tells you how many links you have in your posts, and it's not going to harm you to turn it off. It's all just FYI kind of information. So the cornerstone and the text link aren't anything that is doing anything. So they can be on or off. It's just more FYI kind of information for you. The XML sitemaps is most likely something you will want to leave on because Yoast will auto-generate what's called an XML sitemap, which is basically a list of all the pages, all the posts, all the content on your site that then you can submit to Google Search Console, and it gives Google just a helpful map of your site, like here's all my content, please crawl it and rank it. But it's helpful, particularly if some of your content isn't fully accessible through your navigation menus, which is how bots typically will crawl your content. The write integration, I'm totally blanking on what that does. So read it. I forget at the moment. Admin bar menu, that just puts some Yoast links at when you're logged into your site in the top admin toolbar. Security just allows authors not to do advanced settings with the posts, so that's sometimes a good idea. And the REST API, I mean, I think most people aren't really going to use that, so that could certainly be off. And I provided a link for you to understand that. This is much more of a developer tool, and I don't know that it really has to be on. So the XML sitemap, this is, I feel like, a really critical piece of information for you to be able to work with. If you'll notice the question mark to the right of XML sitemaps on this page, what I would like you to do is to click that question mark icon, and it's going to give you a link to your XML sitemap. And then you'll be able to view what Google is pretty much seeing as to your content. And why this is so helpful is, one is you might see weird content in there. You might see, wow, I didn't know that I was indexing every single individual slide in my sliders on my site, for example. Maybe I don't want to do that. With Google, what we want to do is provide the cleanest content to them. We kind of want to be like museum curators with our content. Like you want to show the best of your content to Google, and how you can kind of see what you're doing in terms of what you're feeding to Google is by viewing your XML sitemap. And once you see maybe there's some garbage in there, then we want to try to control that with our appearance settings in the Yoast plugin. So the XML sitemap is an index of a few different sitemaps grouped by the type of content. So in this example, we have post, page, portfolio item, which is like on my site, like my client stories, and then category. So there's an index of all the categories on my site. After, after we do the next steps to clean up what shows up in the sitemap, you will want to submit your sitemap to Search Console. And to do that, oh, I'm still saying Webmaster Tools there. I need to fix this slide. I just love how Google changes everything all the time. But that's been like years that I keep missing that says Webmaster Tools instead of Search Console. So you'll want to log in to Google Search Console, go to your website. It might be the only thing in there, but if you have multiple sites, you'll want to navigate in Google Search Console to the site you want to submit the sitemap for. And on the left side of Google Search Console will be this overview, performance, URL inspection, coverage, sitemaps. So you'll click sitemap and then click the red Add Sitemap button. And actually, I don't think that red button exists anymore. I think now it is, you just shows up and you put your sitemap file name in the field under Add a New Sitemap. So again, when you click the question mark next to XML sitemaps, it's going to tell you the sitemap file name, which is sitemap underscore index.xml. So remember, it's sitemap underscore, not hyphen. It's not sitemap.xml, it's sitemap underscore index.xml. So all these things are really important when you go to submit it to Search Console, because if you get that wrong, you're going to get an error like, oh, we can't find your sitemap. So make sure you get that exact, and then it will take some time for Google to crawl that sitemap after you've submitted it. It will give you a success status. It will tell you how many URLs it's indexed as a result of that sitemap. So that's the sitemap piece. Next, this is under the Yoast Search Appearance General tab. So at this point, I'm just going through all of the options in the Yoast settings under this in the left part of your WordPress dashboard. This is just sequentially walking through all of these settings. And one of the first things you'll see under the General tab is this knowledge graph information. Not everyone is going to get a knowledge graph in the Google search results page. But if you do, if you are a local business, chances are a lot higher. For example, I'm signed up with Google for Google Local Business, and I have a physical office address, and I'm on Google Maps, and I've connected my website, and I've put in my website that I guess I'm an organization, not a person. I'm kind of kind of both. I am a person, by the way, in case you didn't notice. But I do have an LLC, so in that sense, I'm an organization. So I put in my organization name, and then I uploaded a logo, and the logo needs to be square, and there's specifications about the size of that you can read more about on the Yoast Google Knowledge Graph link. So what this allows your site to do is that if people Google your business and it's connected to your site, that this information will show up on the Google search results page. Next, under search appearance content types, there are a lot of options for hiding or showing content. And here's where you'll want to control the content that Google is getting to index via your sitemap. What I've seen is different plugins like FAQ plugins, sliders, testimonials, various plugins that create different kinds of content will want to have that content show up in the Google search results. But your individual slider outside the context of, let's say, your homepage where the slider appears, those individual slides are kind of garbage for getting indexed in Google. So if you have, when you go to the content types, if you see a bunch of content types you don't recognize, then ideally you'll want to do what I've done in the screenshot, which is hide it from the search results. Say, no, I don't want it in the search results. No, I don't want data in Google Preview. No, I don't want to see the Yoast SEO meta box when I go to work with that content in my WordPress dashboard. So again, you can kind of look at your XML sitemap first, click on all the options in the sitemap, and then go through and see what's being indexed, what's not being indexed, and hide whatever you think is kind of embarrassing or useless content. You can click through on the sitemap and see it all, and you'll know pretty intuitively what should be there and what shouldn't, and you'll come back to search appearance content types and start hiding all this stuff. And the same is for the taxonomies. It is recommended that you disable Google from indexing all of your tag pages, because most people don't have any meaningful strategy with their tags. They overuse tags. It ends up creating a lot of duplicate content. So disabling Google from indexing the tag archives is generally a good idea. And then if you only have one author, your blog and the author archive are going to be the same. So again, kind of a duplicate content issue. You may want to disable your author archives. If you have multiple authors on your site, leave this enabled. Date archives are not really meaningful unless you're a news agency. So disable those as well. If you just have a regular blog, those date archives just kind of, again, muddy up what you're submitting to Google to have indexed. You don't really need them to index all of your posts by month and date. It's not that useful. Media, this caused a big kerfuffle. I'm trying to remember, time is going so fast. Was it last year or the year before that? Maybe it was a couple of years ago, where Yoast's plugin was supposed to be treating media one way, and inadvertently between updates it flipped it, and then if you didn't flip it back, you were going to have issues with Google indexing your media in a way you didn't want to. So media is really interesting in WordPress, and I don't think a lot of people who maybe aren't developers realize this, that pretty much everything in WordPress is a post. Like, WordPress is pretty simple. A page is a post is a post. A WooCommerce product is a post. An order is a post. Like, everything's a post. When you upload an image to the WordPress media library, it becomes a post. It's a post. The image is stored on the file server, but it is really a post, and the post has the URL to the image referenced in it. So before this option was available, what would happen is every single one of your images would end up being indexed by Google on this very basic page, like a single post template with just the horrible URL name that you have for your image and the image. And so your Google search results might be filled with 500 of these posts, these media posts, which just muddied things up for Google. So what we want to have happen is if any of those post URLs that reference the images are called upon, it redirects them to the actual image URL. And the actual image is what will like show up in Google, you know, potentially be indexed by Google via those images being used on actual meaningful posts as opposed to these non-meaningful media posts. And once we're able to talk to each other, and if anyone has questions about that, I can tell you. But just do this, set this setting to yes, and you don't have to understand it any further than that. Social. So under the Yoast plugin, after you go through these search appearance options, there's also breadcrumbs. If anyone has questions about breadcrumbs or the RSS, I can talk about that. But after you've gone through search appearance, below search appearance is social. And it's good to go through all of the tabs in the social. So you can put in links to all of your social identities in the first tab. In the second tab is this where you can set your Facebook and Twitter information. So the Facebook settings, I recommend setting a default image URL that will get used in case any of your pages or posts don't have an image associated with them, which they all should. But let's say someone shares your about page and you haven't specifically set a featured image on your about page, or you haven't specifically set your Yoast social settings on that page to have an image. If someone shares that page on Facebook or Twitter, it's just going to show blank, you know, just about, and maybe the meta description if you set one, maybe nothing if you didn't. So by setting a default image here, if anyone shares any of your content on Facebook or Twitter, if that content doesn't have an image that can be pulled, it will use this image instead. So it's a great fallback, and make sure when people share your site, just look more professional. So I highly recommend doing that. This Facebook app ID, you can set up an app ID for your site. You don't need to. It's a pain in the butt. So, so you can pretty much skip that. Twitter, on the Twitter settings, you can enable Twitter open graph and display types. So for example, I set mine to be a summary with large image, and so sharing my SSL post on Twitter will look like that image on the right, where the image is big on top with the description below. But if you want to have an image on the left with the summary on the right, you could do that as well. Pinterest, if any of you are into Pinterest and sharing some of your posts on Pinterest, it's a good idea to officially connect your site with Pinterest. I put a URL for instructions on how to get to the place where you claim your website on Pinterest, and it gives you this little meta tag that you can paste right into the field in the Yoast plugin, and it just connects it all up together, and it's great. And then in Pinterest, you'll see that your website's been set up. And then Yoast's recent schema markup, like I mentioned in one of those first slides for April, really did more to use the correct schema data for sharing things on Pinterest. So if you're big into Pinterest, definitely get that set up. Then under the Yoast area, so we have general, we have social, then we have tools. There is a place where you can go bulk edit titles and meta descriptions if you have a lot of content, you just want to quickly, you haven't done a proper SEO title or meta description, you can quickly bulk edit everything in this window without having to go and open every single post and page. separately. And I think that's really helpful if you need to do a quick and dirty, wow, I've just done a horrible job all these years. Let me go quickly add some appropriate titles and meta descriptions to my post, and then maybe later work through them more methodically and deliberately on a post by post basis. Authors, in general, I think if you do have multiple authors, even if you have one author, author is one of those kind of things that Google's looking at on your site to kind of, it adds credibility and authority to your posts. Like, is there a real person? You know, Google doesn't want to be necessarily ranking content that's created by bots or, you know, scraped content. So it is a good thing to go to your users part of your WordPress site and make sure that you have appropriate social media set for each of the users, that, you know, their bio, all of their stuff is set nicely in there. And then putting an author box or making sure that your author URL is nice. You can do with these two plugins, or there's a lot of, you know, now we're using Elementor and other page builders that will put nice author boxes on your pages. So it's something that we tend to overlook, is optimizing our authors. So that was just kind of a last bit with that. And you know, what I might like to do is take a little break, because that was a lot of settings to go through, and take some questions, and then we'll go through the page analysis piece. Does that sound good? I'm gonna bring.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, let's do that.
So let's start with Marilyn. She had a question regarding, do we need Yoast Premium to have the full accessibility and function of the SEO plugin?
That is a fabulous question. No, you don't. I mean, the Yoast, the free version of Yoast does so much for you. What the premium version does, most specifically for, you know, just basic blog sites, it allows you to put in related keywords. Like when we think about optimizing content, we might have a keyword phrase that we want to optimize maybe some post on, but in reality, Google's going to index and rank your content for multiple keyword phrases. It's not like there's just one phrase in there that is just the be all end all of that post. There may be other phrases that you want to work with. And so the page analysis, which I'm going to show shortly, gets a little bit more nuanced then. But you can also, you know, for the free version of doing that is put in, when we get to the page analysis, you'll put in your focus keywords and then optimize on that, and then put in another focus keywords and optimize on that. So you can kind of swap them in and out and take advantage of the free. Some of the paid plugins that I do recommend is Yoast has a WooCommerce add-on. They have a local add-on. They also have one for news sites, so you can get in the news carousel schema. So if you have specific use cases, I definitely recommend some of those add-on plugins. The local is amazing, especially with stores with multiple locations. So we'll do all the schema markup for all the addresses and create these really cool pages for each of the locations that you have. So I really love Yoast Local. Yeah, so most of my clients aren't using it, and the ones who need to have the premium, because usually they have e-commerce sites and other things going on.
Fantastic. We have one more question, and that is from Connor. He's asking, is Yoast working in sync with Google Analytics and Google Search Console to improve SEO?
Well, maybe he could explain, like, you're the one who improves SEO, right? But what Yoast is letting you do is do the technical pieces that you need to do for, like, the SEO title and the meta description. Those are technical SEO pieces that you need to have on your site. So it's setting that, which is important. It is providing proper structured markup for the schema for different parts, like the knowledge graph, if that ends up being a thing on your site. Um, you know, Google Analytics and Google Search Console are two different tools. Yoast, for example, isn't going to make your site mobile friendly. Yoast isn't going to make sure that your site is optimized and performing well. It's not going to help with speed issues, though they did have a big speed update, which is cool to make the this new indexing feature to help your site load quicker with all of that markup information, you know, the SEO title and meta description and stuff. Everything loads faster. But you know, you're the one who's optimizing your content on your site. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yep, it made sense. He said thank you.
Yeah.
All
Overall,
right.
there's all these little pieces and it all kind of helps. Like, for example, if you did a Google Lighthouse report that would tell you all these SEO things about your site, it might say, oh, you don't have a meta description set on this page. And so in that sense, Google's kind of letting you have a meta description so you can check that off your list. Okay, well, let me get back to the page analysis. And I hope I'm not talking too fast. I kind of tend to talk. You guys are on the East Coast. You guys talk fast?
We do. Me especially. I'm told frequently that I talk too fast.
Yeah, I'm from California. I talk fast too. Okay. So back to the presenting. Okay. It's a lot to take in, so we can talk more. I can answer questions, more nuanced questions after we're done too. So page analysis. So what we just went through is we went through all the big picture general settings. Like this is just like the general overarching settings of what content we're going to index, you know, basically what we want to feed to Google. Now we have to go into every page, every post, every category, and start optimizing our content. One thing that gets just so little love in terms of optimization are categories. Your categories, as we saw, are included in your XML sitemap. So why not optimize them? Categories are often, I've seen with a lot of my clients' sites, sometimes the thing that really does get some rank. And when you go to edit a category, you have the category title. So I have a category on my site called like WordPress security. Within that category, there is a description field. And when you install the Yoast plugin, that description field gets a little WYSIWYG editor. And then there's also a place where you can optimize the SEO title, the meta description. And I would recommend putting a nice description for all of your categories on your site. And typically people will have, you shouldn't have a million categories. You really think about what are the big buckets of content on your site that you're kind of a topic authority on, and then optimize those categories and add some text description. Other content that we optimize is, of course, posts, our articles. In terms of SEO, it's often those posts, those articles, which is where we're generating our page rank. That's where we're showing up in the search results, because the posts are the things that have the long form content, which is for search engine optimization, and wanting to show up on that first page needs to be anywhere from like 1,500 to 3,000 words, like a minimum of 1,500 words. It's pretty long, but we're seeing that the longer content is the content that shows up higher in the search results. You simply don't have that many words on your pages. You know, typical WordPress business brochure pages, you know, the home page and the About Us page and maybe a services page might have longer content. That might be kind of show up if people search for your business name in the search results, but it's often these articles, the longer form content, that ends up getting indexed. We spend more of our time optimizing. Authors, like I mentioned, let's optimize our authors, our users. If there are real authors on our site and we're going to have an author page for them, then we should treat them like we do our categories and pages and posts. And tags, but I'd say most people aren't using tags correctly and should just hide those. You might have other post types like products in WooCommerce, and you want to do your Yoast optimization on those as well. And product categories too need a description and can be super helpful for SEO. So when you go into any of these things, whether it's a category, a post, a page, a product or product category, you are going to see an area where you have a lot of options in this box called Yoast. And the first area that I go to typically is the Snippet Preview. And the Snippet Preview has both a mobile preview and a desktop preview, and it's nice to look at both. It kind of lets you see what this page might look like in the Google search result. As we saw with my how to install SSL, I do have this particular meta description written, but Google decided to take Google was really smart. It took my structured 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 step instructions and created its own meta description. And maybe I should just use what Google had and substitute this out. But anyway, when you're looking at your post or page, you'll click the edit snippet button and you'll be able to type in what's called the SEO title. And this is what shows on the Google search results or any search engine results page is that title. That again is that blue link at the top, or blue text at the top. The SEO title is different than your page title. If you don't specify an SEO title, it will use your page title, which is the heading 1, what you see on the page at the top of the page, your heading 1 tag, but it doesn't have to be. So sometimes our page title, our SEO title might be nuanced a little bit more to encourage people to click. Like when the page shows up on the search results, like what's going to compel people to click? It's often a question, and it may not be the same as what we use at the top of the page. You also have the option of modifying the slug and then entering a meta description. And since this isn't like a content presentation, my full class, when I talk about like hitting the SEO jackpot in terms of on-page SEO, is that we're going to have the SEO title, the slug. The meta description doesn't feature as much into PageRank, but is more to compel people to want to click. The SEO title, the slug, the heading 1 tag, all your subheading tags, your content, and alt text on your images. And when you hit that jackpot, it's not going to guarantee that you rank for that, but it's all stuff you kind of need to do to rank for that. So that's where this comes in handy. So the other part of the Yoast area on your page or post is this analysis tool, which gives you green lights, red lights for how well you've done in utilizing your keyword phrase on the page. One thing that I'd be really careful about is over optimizing on your phrase, because Google's getting so much more intelligent with its AI in understanding phrases in more nuanced ways. So you don't just have to repeat the same phrase 40, 50 times on the page for this to work. So I kind of use the red light, green light in a very, just more of a mindfulness thing rather than trying to get all green lights. The goal is not to try to get all green lights. The goal is to write good content for your users. And the goal of these lights is to get you to be mindful of, I don't use any meaningful keywords in any of my headings, and headings are really important to Google. Or I don't have any links on this article, internal or external. It lets you know, like, this particular article is 2,289 words. Like, yay, it's a nice long article, so that's good. It's also letting me know, hey, you're not really introducing your topic in your first paragraph. And you might go look at your paragraph and say, you know, my paragraph's fine. I do use those words, just not in the order that I put them into the keyword focus field. I think it's fine. So again, don't make it like you have to get all green lights. This is more reminders for you to just think a little bit more consciously about things that you might have missed, including, you know, maybe you haven't linked to anything outside of your website. So linking internally is good, but if you only link internally to your site, you're never going to be seen as an authority, because authorities, if you look at Wikipedia or the New York Times or any other news sites, they link outside to other sources of information. So that indicates to Google, hey, I'm an authority. I know where to look for the goods. And so it just kind of gets you thinking about all of those things. And oh, I put in all these images, but I didn't put any alt text on the images, and they're important images, and I need to describe what's on those images. So all good stuff. Cornerstone Articles is another feature of that tool in there. It lets you mark a particular article as Cornerstone. There's a great post on that. So the analysis gets a little more tough with the Cornerstone Articles. These are your like authoritative big pieces on your site, and that then you might link other articles from that, like smaller articles, more focused, narrowly focused articles off of your Cornerstone piece. Like on my site, I write about WordPress migration, and maybe there's a lot of different methods for migrating a site, but my Cornerstone article really kind of provides a great overview of all these, provides some detail, but then maybe I link off to one specific tool, and I have an article just on using duplicator plugin. So the duplicator plugin article isn't a Cornerstone piece. This bigger article about site migrations is the Cornerstone piece, and I have a lot of little articles kind of dangling off of it. And so Yoast is able for you to mark a piece as Cornerstone. It does nothing. Saying an article is Cornerstone does nothing for your SEO. It's not actually doing anything. It's just making you mindful of, oh, this is my Cornerstone article piece. I should be linking to it and linking from it, you know? So it's again, another mindfulness kind of feature, not a real thing that happens because you check this box. So it does provide you, it communicates to Google the posts that are most important when you have a Cornerstone piece, not because it's marked as Cornerstone, but because, wow, this article has a lot of links coming into it. This must be the central article if it's got all this stuff hanging off of it. And yeah, so social media options. In the Yoast plugin, you have the option you've set for the SEO, you set the SEO title and meta description, and that looks okay on the search engine results page. But I found when you share content on Facebook, sometimes you want it to look differently. It's so funny how something looks great on the search engine results page, and then you go to share that same post on Facebook and you're like, that just looks like the most boring thing imaginable. And so you might have a snazzier title for your Facebook title. You might have a more, somewhat more engaging Facebook description. You might want to use a different image than your featured image. Like for example, on a lot of blog sites, the featured image is used in post grids or post lists. And it may not be the best looking image to share on social media. And if you have a site where your articles are shared a lot on social media, sometimes you want to indicate a specific image for being shared on social media. And the Facebook image is used as what we call open graph, and that is like a Facebook thing, but other social media platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter also make use of this open graph data. So if you set a Facebook title, Facebook description, and image, that will also be pulled into Twitter and LinkedIn. And then Yoast also has specific settings for Twitter, because Twitter, we have the length restriction. And so you might want something to be a lot more pithy for Twitter. So we do have all those options with the free Yoast plugin as well. And then what I recommend is if you're having any issues with what is showing on Facebook or Twitter, there are Facebook and Twitter cache any URL that has been shared. And so if you change this and you go to share the URL again, you're still going to see your old content, and you need to go to the debug on Facebook or the validator on Twitter to clear out your old cached version of that shared page, so that now Facebook can get your new updated cool image and engaging new description. Advanced settings, this is helpful for thank you pages, for, I don't know, affiliate landing pages, any sort of content that is just not appropriate to be indexed by Google or show up in your XML sitemap. You can go to the advanced area and say, hey, don't index this page, don't follow its, do or don't follow links on this page. And so that is super helpful. And then actually, I think, gosh, I hope I didn't talk for too little time. Oh, we're at about an hour, so that's good. The rest of these slides, I'm done lecturing at you. The rest of these slides are from my course, and our resources. Rebecca Gill is amazing. If you are a small business owner and you want to figure yourself out and what your messaging is, she did an incredible workshop at WordCamp US in Philadelphia this past November. Watch that if you do nothing else. Kate Toon is someone I got to interview on my podcast. She's got some great classes. Yoast has a great tutorial. I have different tools on performance. Speed is a factor in your ranking. Mobile friendliness testing, different other site analysis tools, ways of seeing what's all being indexed on your site, and doing site audits. Link building is kind of the end game. You want people linking to your articles. That's actually how you get page rank. You write good content that people want to link to. And so this will let you see who's linking to you and how you're doing on that. And how do you build links? Lots of great articles on that. Understanding structured data a little bit more if you do have kind of products, recipes, anything like that that you think you qualify to have some schema markup in the search results. These are some good articles. AMP, if you, I won't get into AMP, but AMP, it's there. Some people are using it. It can be helpful for your site. SSL, if you need to install that, I have a good blog post on it. Once you get people to site, the goal is you convert them. It's not about getting a lot of traffic. It's about converting customers. So how are you going to convert people? More tools. Analyze your competition. That's always a good source of information on how to approach all of this. Keyword research tools. Who to read and follow. Like, who are the leaders? Who are the people on Twitter you want to be following and learning more about SEO? And I think, yeah, oh, all these miscellaneous links. This is just kind of randomly spread throughout my other slides. So, okay. See how many of you have managed to stay. I'll stop sharing.
Right.
Oh, good. We haven't lost too many people.
No.
They all fell asleep. They've all logged off.
No, not at all. Not at all. Just I have one question, and then I'm sure others will have questions. Maria's asking, you mentioned users aren't using tags properly. What does using tags properly well look like?
I think it mostly means having a strategy. What I think of as proper tag use is that you have, let's say you have your big buckets of content, but you might have some posts that fall into separate buckets, but they're related in some way. So for example, I work with an herbalist, and she has like her health and wellness blog, she might have some recipes as a different category of her blog. Another category related to herbal healing, you know. But between these categories, she has posts that use lavender. So we might tag it lavender, and then now you can, through the tag, you can see all the articles that that possibly pertain to using lavender, either in a recipe or as the healing formula or as some other in a health and wellness article. And that doesn't necessarily, that tag archive doesn't necessarily have to be indexed by Google specifically to be valuable, but it certainly does help people who are navigating the site be able to get kind of to related content through the tags. And so what I see typically when I go to sites is people are just randomly typing tags. They don't have a strategy. They don't really think ahead. A strategy would mean you think ahead about what's your different types of related content, and you write it out and you use those tags consistently, and that not repetitively. Like, you don't tag everything on your site. WordPress, if I have a WordPress site, I'm not going to tag every single article as WordPress. If you find you're using a tag on every single article, you're probably using tags wrong. So yeah,
that's almost with any taxonomy, right? if you're not aware of what the hierarchy and how it all works, it probably means something.
Yeah, people are more typically going to have 2,000 tags though than 2,000 categories.
Right.
So I'm like, ditch them. Start fresh.
So I'm seeing here a question that says, do tags only work for internal site use or for Google searches too?
I don't think it's so much a Google search thing, but it, you know, just in the same way that a user might crawl your site through these tags, a Google bot might see the tags at the bottom of a post and crawl the site through those links. But I don't think that those tag archive pages necessarily have to be indexed by Google, because all your content's probably going to be indexed through your categories anyway. So it's tough, and I just think that you're more at risk of creating duplicate content kind of situations by indexing your tags than just by indexing your categories and being really thoughtful about how you're using your categories.
And then the question is, same with categories. Should categories be set for location pages? I think those are two questions.
So same with categories. Yeah, categories need to really be thought out, and categories are really about what are you a topic authority on, and what are you going to commit to developing content around. And some people spread themselves too thin, and then they're kind of master of all. I mean,
jack of all,
whatever, master of none kind of thing. So, you know, it's just like, what can you really be in a topic authority? Most people can't be a topic authority on more than 3 or 4 or 5 topics. So what are those? And I think even if you go to the Moz.com blog, you'll see how they do their categories and how they structure their content. And it's an excellent example of being very deliberate and precise about how you want to organize yourself. And then in terms of set for location pages, I guess it depends on how many locations. Let's say you have 10 locations in Chicago and 20 in some other city. The categories archives then have some meaning. Like, let's look at all the Chicago locations posts. But if you have 5 locations with 5 categories, 1 category for each location, then the category page ends up being duplicate content to the actual single location page. So it's not worth indexing that.
Okay, question.
And go ahead and say it out loud for people who are listening. Yeah.
So what if you have authored a post that was shared to another site and then you want to use on your site? Is it best to no follow, no index that post?
Oh, interesting. I mean, that kind of comes to that question of what did Google index first, and who's it going to see as like the original author of the post? which is a problem. Like if you're guest blogging on another blog, is that kind of what it's related to? Like if you guest blog for Huffington Post or something,
Yes.
and then you want to share that content on your site. I mean, the problem is it's like you've kind of given away the SEO value of that article to the HuffPost, and I don't know if you'll get down marked on your site for posting that same article. It can happen. I guess I would tend to want to recommend to people, like, take that content, put it on your site, but change it up and make it longer. Like maybe you had a word restriction with HuffPost, and now like it's on your site, and instead of being 1,500 words, you can make it 3,000. Then I would just do that rather than do full duplicate content. And if you know, yeah. So.
Yeah, and it's likely that HuffPo is going to get more, mojo from Google than you are. And so maybe doing a canonical, right? Putting in the canonical and directing it all to them. Would you recommend that?
Well, I mean, then you're just still giving it away to them, and then no indexing on your site doesn't really give you anything either. So if you want to make use of that content, I guess I would just beef it up more. I can see if I can find a good advice article on that and post it on the Meetup group. But I do have challenges with that with some of my author clients. They're really good, but they're giving all their content away to someone else. So I'd say, why don't you be the first author and write a really good post on your blog, and then take some condensed version of that and share it on a post second.
That's fair.
Give yourself 6 to 8 weeks or a few months of getting page rank on that topic. And yeah.
Yeah, it depends on, I guess, if the post on HuffPo is linking to your website, and kind of that
for you.
Yeah, like what's the real goal of doing that original post on someone
Exactly.
else's? So
yeah.
All right.
And
Anybody
someone
else?
said, so link to the original post and no index. Yeah. I mean, if you're not going to change it up at all, you might just do that. Yeah.
All right. Any final questions for Angela before I turn off the recording?
You guys are all great. It was fun to finally do this. I was scheduled last fall to do this talk, but I had to have a surgery and just couldn't make it. I'm having some weird health issues last fall, but
we're glad you're here now.
Yeah, it's awesome. So thanks a lot.
On behalf of everybody, I want to just round of applause for you. Thank you very much for coming and presenting. And so I'm going to